This is the Farm Hop Life podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRozier. Today, my guest is Jordan Green of J&L Green Farm in Edinburg, Virginia. He and his wife, Laura, along with their three kids, raise pasture pork, beef, chicken, turkey, and eggs. That is quite a lot. Thank you for being here tonight. You are quite generous with your time to others. I noticed that about your videos. You're always giving farm advice, business advice, or even ripping on Dave Ramsey. That's pretty cool.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So in your first Q&A that you did kind of give your background, but I'd like to hear it again if you don't mind. So how did you get started farming?
Well, I mean, like most things, they come about as an accumulation of experiences and trial and error over the years. So I couldn't tell you the first day that I did something farm related. It was, probably helping, my grandfather in a garden as a kid or something like that. But things that become a lifetime passion kind of grow over the years, and I think that's how it worked out for me. That as a teenager, when we moved here to Virginia, I got a job working on a local farm, which led into having a little bit more of a business approach to some of the farm stuff that was going on at my parents' place, to getting the opportunity to go to Polyface and do an apprenticeship there in 2001.
That's awesome.
Which then led into kind of a small consulting business for a few years, helping other people start farms around the East Coast. And then I took a break for 5 years to go to the Marine Corps to do something else I wanted to do with my life, and then got married while I was in the military. And my wife and I came back to Virginia in 2009 and started J&L Green Farm. So it's kind of been a lifelong endeavor, I suppose you could say.
It's not just like one thing. It's like a whole accumulation of lots of little events that led to where you are today. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when did J&L start then? What year was that? How long have you been operating?
So that was 2009. Right in the middle of the financial crisis, basically. About a year prior, we had started planning to come back and start the farm. And I remember talking to one of my superior NCOs in the unit, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm going to get out and start a farm." And he's like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Like, well, thank you for your opinion, but I'm still leaving. So yeah, we came back in June or July of 2009, and it wasn't. We had already had the wheels in motion for at least a year before that. So it wasn't like we didn't know what we were going to do and came back and then decided to farm. It was a very deliberate move to come back to this area. We had an opportunity on a piece of property to start farming there. We had a family member that was going to front us some of the capital to get started, and we already had somewhat of a market ready to go. So we were able to hit the ground day one and already have a lot of things to do, and probably most importantly, have cash flow for the business coming, sooner rather than later.
Right. Yeah. Your video of what was it, $80,000 worth of pigs looks like out on your pasture and whatnot. That's so
130,000. We were in inflationary times, Matt. So it's 130.
That's true. It's only 130 now, man.
That's right.
What a bargain.
Oh,
man, I liked your I can't remember when it was posted, but there was just a big pile. There must have been 50 little piglets all in one pile in the woods that you got. That was kind of funny. I've never seen so many piglets just piled up there.
Yeah.
So then what would you say motivates you to grow your own food? Not just for others, but for you and your family?
Sure. Well, I mean, you can look around right now and see that it's probably a good idea to grow your own food. But, obviously we're in a kind of very interesting situation right now as a country, and hopefully there will be stability in the near future. For me, growing our own food, I'm always appreciative of being prepared, and I would not say I'm a prepper per se, but you do sleep better at night knowing you've got 20,000 pounds of meat in the walk-in freezer out behind the house,
Yeah.
and animals out in the field. And so, I appreciate those elements of realizing that for all of the technology that we have and the progress that's been made with humanity, over the last, say, 1,000 years, we still are very connected to the earth being, a pretty vital part of our existence, let's just say. In that food still has to be grown. Animals have to be butchered, meat has to be cut up, and farmers have to do a lot of this work. And that's a very important part of human civilization. And we can become so detached from that in today's world, especially, where most people have never seen an animal, be harvested and cut up. They don't know what to do if you were to toss, a carcass of some animal on the table. They wouldn't know what to do with it.
Right.
I like just having a little bit more security in my well-being, let's say. And fortunately for me, farming is something that I'm passionate about and I enjoy doing, and it's also something that is a very beneficial element for a thriving society to have a good agricultural base. So for me, I also enjoy the elements of eating food that you've grown. It's very, once you have grown, say, strawberries for yourself, it's very hard to go back and eat some strawberries from the store and taste
Yes,
that
absolutely.
kind of watery cardboard texture. And the same is with meats, that there's a huge difference between animals that are raised in a nature mimicking production model where they are allowed to express their innate animalness. The quality of the meat that's coming from those carcasses is far and away vastly superior to what you will find in the store and what's been raised in a commodified, commercialized production model. So the joke my wife and I have is that we can't really go out to barbecue places because we're spoiled by our own meats. So whenever we go someplace, we start commenting on the quality of their meat and how they need to step up their game a little bit.
Is that a sale then? Do you try to sell them like, hey, by the way, I raise pigs?
Not really, because we decided many years ago to not really pursue restaurants from a marketing standpoint. It's just a game that we didn't want to play. That a restaurant typically wants a very select range of cuts, usually the more higher quality one, and they want the rock bottom price possible. There's very few restaurants engaged in this nose to tail mentality where they're going to use every
Sure.
piece of meat off of the carcass. And so
Sounds like they need better chefs to figure it out then.
yeah, I think it's all of the above. That it's easy to compartmentalize the problems that we have in the food system and say, oh, it's the chefs that are problem. Oh, it's the USDA that's the problem.
Oh, I
government.
meant just like be creative with
the
cuts of
well,
meat that you have. Yeah.
I think solutions though have to be very holistic in nature. That it needs better eaters, and if
That's true.
you can have an amazing nose to tail restaurant and the most artistic and creative chef imaginable, but if no one comes to the restaurant to eat, well, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm a big advocate of personal responsibility, and the reason that 30-40% of all meals are fast food that's eaten in a car. Yes, there can be elements of that are societal and marketing, sure, but let's not neglect the personal choice that everybody makes, that the market has chosen to embrace that. And if the market would choose to embrace something better, then you would see those restaurants and chefs come along.
That's true.
It starts with both you and me making a change and then trying to influence our friends to make a change as well.
Trying to make an influence, and that's all you can really do. Like I don't know if you've this is a little bit of a tangent, but that's okay. I don't know if you've ever heard like your circle or sphere of control and influence and whatnot. So like
Yeah,
so you get it. Like you can only like have an influence on other people. The only thing you can really
sure.
control is yourself and whatnot. And so it really, I
Yeah.
mean, even your dog, you don't have control over your dog, right? I mean, you can only influence your dog to make right decisions. You can't like specifically control your dog, but
Yeah, and how much emotional and mental energy is wasted on stressing and venting about that outermost circle, which is the thing we cannot control at all. But
exactly.
it's easy to rage against the other people.
Oh yes, yes. The other side, yes. It's always the other side. It's their fault, yes. Um. So then, I'm trying to put the timeline together in my head. So it was 2001 when you worked at Polyface. Was that really before Polyface was even really well known?
I mean, certainly less well known than now. I mean, that was before Michael Pollan and the Omnivore's Dilemma, before a lot of other things that came along. But they were pretty well known then. I would say more inside
Okay.
of the farming community. There was a steady stream of visitors when I was there. They had some on-farm events that were well attended, but it was a smaller organization. That there were no
Okay.
full-time employees at that point outside of the family. They only had 2 apprentices per year, and they had one rental farm in addition to their home base. So, certainly it's grown a lot since then to where they have, dozens of full-time employees. They manage thousands of acres of farmland. And, Joel's a lot more well-known and written a lot more books since then.
Definitely. Uh, so how old were you then when you worked at Polyface?
I was 19 when I went there.
19. That's right.
Mhm.
Okay. So having been there and like working, were you working side by side with Joel then?
There was a decent amount of working alongside with him. I'd say maybe half the days
Oh,
that he was out, but he was doing a fair amount of speaking then as well.
sure.
And doing some media stuff. But yeah, more days than not, he was out there doing different things on the farm. But the approach they had was not necessarily you tagging along with him or Daniel all the time. It was them getting you trained to do a specific aspect of the farm, and then you are
Right.
taking care of that aspect. And actually being an asset to the team and not just a liability that has to get towed around everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, we might come back to that later. It's not on my questions, but we might get to that. Might get to that later. So then working at Polyface, you must have picked up quite a lot of like practices or like techniques or like methods that you're now currently implementing on your own farm.
It was a good exposure to see pasture-based production models at scale. We had some of that on our my parents' kind of homestead, farmstead type of thing. I had been around scaled agriculture, working on a previous farm job, but it was commodity agriculture, and it was not a pasture-based type production model. So, certainly going there, it was good to have that exposure of what they look like. B, helping them build out a rental farm was very valuable experience of getting an eye for looking at a piece of ground, seeing what the potential there is. Understanding that you can get started with a pretty low level of infrastructure. You don't have to have a completely built out farm with everything there in order to start operating. And those were certainly, very valuable foundational experiences to, what we took and did later on.
Um, so with you having been at Polyface and now doing your own thing, and you're kind of doing a lot more like you're helping other farmers. Are you going to be the new Joel Salatin? Are you going to be on Joe Rogan and just like attempted to be destroyed in the media.
I mean, do you have Joe Rogan's number? Can you hook me up?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
all
mean, I don't know.
podcasters, we have a phone book.
That's right. I mean, for me, sharing what we do is, something that I'm passionate about because I don't like seeing people fail at things. And startup farms have one of the highest failure rates of
Yeah,
of any startups out there. It's in the 90 percentile range of farms that start are going to fail within 5 to 7 years. And there's really no reason everyone needs to reinvent the wheel entirely on their own. And it started off with 5-6 years ago with starting a YouTube channel to address what I saw as a missing element in social media, and YouTube, for showing how these applications were done at some level of scale. That there's 10,000, 100,000 YouTube channels for homestead stuff.
yeah.
But there, at the time, there was really nothing for, here's how to do a group of 100 pigs instead of just one pig. And
Sure.
here's how to look at your farm, not only through the lens of what is rewarding for you personally or what is good for the community, but also understanding that the financial health of the business is one of the first elements for a true sustainable model. That if any particular model is not financially healthy and sustainable, then you've got no business calling yourself a sustainable farm. And just kind of grew from there to people wanting to come out and see the farm, and us doing some classes, and getting invited to speak at different places. And so I'm for me, the whole public side is a small piece of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I still have a large operation to run here and a team of people to work with, but it's been a fun thing to do as a kind of secondary element.
Did you have something like a Warrior Day, or what was it called? It was
Yeah, it's a Warrior Field Day.
that one.
Yeah, there's a big draw for the veteran community to agriculture. That there's a lot of similarities between military service and operating a farm. The joke is that we have learned how to suffer well while we were in the military, and so you're very suited for the farm life if you know how to suffer in the rain and the snow and the mud.
Sure.
At least the pigs haven't invented AK-47s yet, so they're not shooting back at you. So it's all good. But there's people who go into the military, by and large, are very purpose driven, very mission oriented, getting things done, relatively low BS types. And when you leave that military service, you have left a community and a family that maybe you appreciated or didn't appreciate, but you do miss that element when you have departed, of having people of similar mindset around you, of having a team that's going to keep you on the straight and narrow, maybe, and kick your butt when necessary. And that is missing for a lot of veterans when they leave, and they find I think a lot of reward and a lot of healing in some type of farming. And there's a lot of interest of guys and girls coming out of the military of, hey, I want to grow my own food. I'm tired of eating MREs and the chow hall, so I would like some quality food in my life. And you've seen the world. You see what life outside of the American bubble is, and that starvation and death are closer than a lot of us tend to think. And so it's kind of a good idea to kind of have your own thing going, because I don't want to starve to death.
Yep, definitely. Travel will absolutely open your eyes to stuff that you just unless you're in like even like the worst of the worst, the United States, it's not like it is in other countries. Um, when my wife and I took our took our honeymoon, we went to Asia and was in like in it was in Cambodia. We were like we got like a little tour of some temples scheduled, and like so you get up at like 4 o'clock. They make you like food and you bring it with you to the temple because you're there before sunrise. And anyway, so you eat, and this little kid's coming around and collecting all this trash. Well, like what looks like trash. Uh, and he like started taking like my styrofoam container, and I'm like, I'm still eating, but I think I was still like eating when I wasn't really like hungry. I was like, it's in front of me, I'm gonna eat it. I saw that, and then later I saw that same little kid digging through the trash looking for food scraps. Like, and I was like, oh, I'm a huge dickhead. Like, I should have just given him like that half a banana or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like, it would have meant way, way more to him than like me like eating that banana. So like little events like that, you should.
Yeah.
I don't know. It can change you.
You would never guess sitting here in the United States that 30% of the planet lives on less than 1,000 calories a day.
That's crazy. I haven't heard
And
that, but I
most
believe it.
of us probably throw away 1,000 calories a day
That is
worth
true.
of food.
That is really true. I'm up to get off on like another little tangent. It drives me nuts when my wife puts like leftovers in the refrigerator and completely forgets about them. Like I will put off making something new for the night, and I will raid the refrigerator like what's still in here, and like there'll be like her whatever drawer, and I'll like open it up. I'm like, this is like black. Like this was good. Like what is this still doing here? What was your intention on eating this? You know, like now we obviously have to throw it away. Like what?
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to take things for granted when that's the environment that you grew up in. I got probably 8-9 years ago, I got to go to a very poor country, and it was there for a different reason. But I'm looking at the farms because I'm like, I'm passionate about farming. I'm like, oh, these are pretty cool little farms, and they had pigs there, which was pretty neat, and they have them on collars and leashes tied to trees, and the same with their cows. And then at night, they bring them all into their houses so that they're not stolen. And that's just something that you would never think about in the United States. I mean, there's some cattle rustling here and there, but that's very, very minuscule. You would never think about as a farmer that if I don't bring my animals in the house, somebody's going to steal them tonight.
Right.
And ways that we produce food here, farmers in other countries could never even dream about because all their stuff would get stolen. And that's their reality. And we're sitting here in our reality like, well, why don't you just get your act together? Which, their worries is about, can I keep the animals in the house at night so they're not stolen?
Right. Like here, it'd be like your dog's going to get stolen before like your cow or your pig or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I think it was, just a couple of years ago in China, wasn't an order given to basically kill all domesticated dogs because of the amount of food that they were eating. And they're trying to stave off maybe it was, maybe not China, maybe it was North Korea or somewhere, but stuff that could you imagine the outrage in the United States if an order came down from the government that all domesticated pets need to be killed so that we have enough food for the people. I mean, that would just
that's
blow our mind.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you eat the dogs, then it's a win-win. I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was in North Korea, which is always on
wouldn't surprise me.
Brink of starvation anyway. But
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, pets eat a lot of food, and
they do.
In a lot of countries, that's real issues that they have to wrestle with that your average person in the West is never even going to think about.
Have you seen this latest outcry for about domestic cats being outside? Like outside cats kill billions of birds every year. Like, we need to save the birds. Like, this has been
Uh-huh.
a thing lately.
Yeah, I've seen that it's like 3-4 billion birds a year are killed by cats. But people will tweet about that while they're eating something that is sprayed with pesticides that also kill billions of birds. So
That's true.
it's kind of a game of choose your hypocrisy that you're going to engage in. Nature has a way of balancing predators and prey, and you see it in like, say, fox populations when they are overpopulated, how diseases break out and it
Sure.
reduces their numbers down. And then when their prey species rebound, then the predator species rebounds as well. So
It's all
I'm not too
balanced,
worried
sure.
about the house cats.
Me either. So what have you tried on your farm that's worked really well for you? It could be like something in business. It could be a farming technique. It could be like a single strand of fence to keep your pigs in versus making it out of hog panel. So something like that.
Yeah, I guess at a real macro level, what has worked well for us is it's really a basic fundamental of being successful in a market-driven economy, but it's very often overlooked in the farming sector. Is we followed the opportunity. Where the market led, that's where we went, and that's something I tell young farmers, not young people, but young farmers who are getting in, is don't come into the farm saying I'm going to produce this, that, and the other when your market might not be looking for that. See what your local market or the regional market is desiring, or what can you create demand for, and see if producing that fits inside the context of your farm. Like for us, we couldn't, grains are always in demand, but we can't produce grains on our farm because it's very hilly. And so, very small percentage of our acreage could be devoted to grain production. So we don't do that. The huge opportunity that became apparent in our market once we were on the ground and operating was piglets. That we were growing out pigs and finishing them for Polyface to help with a supply shortage they had. And
cool.
we needed piglets. This was back in 2009, 2010. We needed piglets, but they were already buying up all of the piglets from the local area. And so we had a supply issue ourselves, and we decided, all right, we will just start farrowing our own piglets to address our own shortfall. And our own shortfall was also a shortfall for a lot of other people, because they didn't, they needed piglets too. And so the opportunity opened to produce a product that we probably never would have considered initially, but because we had that fundamental approach of being very flexible and allowing the market to kind of lead where we went production wise, seeing what the market wanted, seeing that producing that fit in the context of the farms, the ground that we had and the local kind of conditions, and also that it was in the context of something that we could be happy with producing. All of a sudden, then we're not trying to fight the market to do our thing. We're not just another guy who's opening, who wants to start a dairy, let's say, in an already oversaturated dairy market, and then wondering why the business is struggling when we're producing an overproduced product, and market prices are driven down. So if you can stay flexible when you're starting the farm, make adjustments, pivot quickly, try things, fail quickly, move on to something else, that's a huge piece, I think, to what has built our success to this point, and kept us from making mistakes that I've seen other young farmers make when they jump into a certain production model, invest millions of dollars into infrastructure, and then they're stuck doing that thing for the next 20 years just to pay the mortgage, whether the market is rewarding it or not. Because banks are always happy to lend you money. Actually making money with it is the more challenging aspect.
Yeah, that's tough. So I'm curious, what kind of mistakes would you see young farmers making?
I mean, that certainly would be a big one right there that we just talked about is making decisions that confine you to rigidity, a business rigidity where you no longer have flexibility. You can't change, the posture of what you're doing inside of an operation. You can't pivot quickly to new market conditions. Like at the start of COVID, we went from shipping 5 or 6 boxes of product a week to 80 or 90. And because we were flexible in how we market and distribute, we could make the adjustment very quickly. So, we probably had say a 50% shift in how product was being distributed. That's something that is difficult for a lot of businesses to change that fast. There was an industry article that came out to the time talking about, I think it was Sanderson Farms, how they were shifting how they processed chicken, basically doing more retail ready chicken instead of institutional chicken because restaurants were closing down and stuff. And they were shifting they were shifting the production by 3%. And that was like a big deal. Because, for them it requires reconfiguring equipment and shifting production lines. And, it's a big move. Right. But when you have that more flexible posture and you can be nimble, you can move quickly. And that's also an element from military doctrine that mobility is key. And you can look at any conflict in history. You can look at conflicts that are going on right now to see that mobility and flexibility on the battlefield and the business field often will defeat a more rigid ideology.
So so that's about, things that young farmers struggle with or have failed at. What have you tried that failed or didn't work well for you?
On an operational level, we tried doing sheep for several years, and that failed pretty spectacularly for something that's more of an environmental condition, unique to where we are. I'm not a sheep expert. I'm sure someone who's listening who is will correct me on this, but we had a bad parasite problem with this flock of sheep that we had, and we were worming them, and we were doing everything we could, rotating pastures, real extensive ground rest, and we were still losing a lot of lambs. And I talked with a retired New Zealand sheep farmer, and he said, well, the challenge that you're always going to have in Virginia is it gets hot, but it's very high humidity. And sheep can take heat, they can take a dry heat, or they can take a cold humidity, but it's real tough when it's a hot humidity. Sure. And maybe it was a breed thing, I don't know, but we got out of sheep after that and just dumped it and moved on to something else. So, is that a failure? Sure, but we learned lessons from it. And any failure that you survive is more like a lesson. And you've learned to do something a little bit
teachable moment. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, on the sheep thing, it probably that for that exact reason, I've been looking at hair sheep specifically for they seem to do better with like parasites and hoof rot things and easy lambing.
Right. These were Katahdin Dorpers.
Oh, really? Yeah. Interesting.
But okay. Yeah, and then there's that you make when you are growing up in business. And again, it's not an age thing. There are infant business people who are 60 because they're just getting started. And there are, elder businessmen who are in their young 30s because they've been doing it for 20 years already.
Right. They've been hustling since grade school.
Right. There's going to always be a process of failing at things. And, the key is always to try to fail quickly at it. So you learn the lesson as quickly as you can and with the least expense, hopefully, that you can, so that you go on to something else.
Sure.
There's certainly no, there should not be a stigma or a shame at failing at something, because that means you have found something else will be the success, not that thing that you failed at. And it's something that we teach to everyone who comes through our farm to work, because a lot of people come here with no farming experience and they basically want an internship, but we do not do internships. You can come work here as part of our full-time staff, and that's going to have expectations and all of that. And most of them, I would say, within 2 to 3 years, they leave and they never farm again. And we tell them right up front that 80% of people who come through here leave in 2 or 3 years and they never farm again. But we don't consider that a failure, and neither should you if you're one of those people, because you have figured that out while you're here. Sure. Instead of going and vesting yourself heavily into something that you're going to learn down the road you're not really passionate about. You don't like the hours that's involved, the being out in the rain. It's not an easy career path. Failure to me, having a life grinding away that's something you're not passionate about, and always raging against the universe, that is the failure. And it doesn't matter what the job is or how much money you made at it. That's more of a failure than doing something for a short period of time and then deciding not to do it and moving on to something else.
Yeah. I suppose if you're going to fail upwards, find that next thing.
Yeah. At least fail laterally.
Yeah. At the minimum, fail laterally. If you're going to fail, do not let it set you back for a lot of money or a lot of years to recover. Let's get into a little employment side, or volunteers, internships, employees. I woofed on a farm here in Montana in my early 20s for 6 weeks, and one thing that the rancher brought up to me, she's like, how do I make you valuable to this farm? Like, this isn't, I'm young and dumb. I don't know anything. I'm just here to be some muscle, essentially. Like, here, go feed cows, go pick up chicken eggs, whatever. And she's like, how do you, so that you're more of an asset to me than, a burden. So how do you handle that on your property, with your employees?
Well, we tell people when they, our hiring process is, you apply, you have to fill out a questionnaire. We do a Zoom interview most of the time. And then you have to come do a 3-day workout with us. You actually got to come out here, stay on the farm. You got to work with us for 3 days as a checkout, just to see if what you thought it was going to be matches your expectations, and also for us to screen who you are to make sure you're not some kind of lunatic. And we tell people when they come out for that, it's not a secret test or anything. And I say that the number one thing, the two things I'm looking for is attitude and initiative. If you have those, anything else can be taught. If you don't have those, it really doesn't matter what we teach you. We can never really trust you. And so that's what we heavily screen on. I'm a big fan of extreme ownership, and we, apply that as a team. And that's such a critical element, especially for a livestock farm, that we are dealing with living animals. And if every person on our team does not have an extreme level of ownership for what they're doing, that leads, in the best case scenario, it leads to lost weight on a finished carcass, let's say. And in the worst case scenario, it leads to dead animals. And so there's no, kind of clocking out mentality of, well, that's not my problem. Everything is everybody's problem. And
Right.
if you see a problem, you need to address it, even if it's something that is not normally something you would do. And so
I can actually relate to that really quick. The underfeeding animals. So this was in November when I did this, when I started. And I remember I did my morning chores, and I came back in the house, was having my tea, and she had gone outside to do something else, and I just hear a bunch of swearing, bunch of yelling, cussing, and I just it's like, I don't know what happened. I guess she'll just come inside and let me know what happened. I don't know what's going on. And so she comes in and just tears me a new one. Apparently, it was so cold that the cows needed more to eat. And so the way you could tell is if their backs are like arched, like they're trying to retain more heat for themselves or something. I don't remember, but that wasn't something I was ever taught. And
right.
so I felt like it was a little unjustified. That, like, how am I supposed to know that? I've
Right.
never been that close to cows, really, like day to day. So I mean,
Yeah.
I still remember it to this day. That
Well,
what to
and
look
there,
for.
of course, there's a dichotomy for everything. We can't expect someone who just started working here to know the intricacies of sow labor and when you need to intervene and what drugs you might need to give, or when you just need to let her
Sure.
alone and let her do her thing. Um, and so we have an incremental kind of teaching process with staff, and we try to break it down into some mantras that are easy to remember. Like the first one that we teach staff when they come here is everything revolves around feed, water, fence. And so that's easy to remember. It doesn't matter whether you are on, chickens or feeder pigs or piglets or sows. Each one of those animals is going to have a different application of feed, water, fence, but it's the same mental checklist. That is the feed right for that particular animal, and
Sure.
its station in life. Is the fence working correctly, and do they have water? And that is something that even someone who's on their first day should be able to grasp and can be held accountable to. That
Right.
if you're not walking over and visually verifying the waterer, then you've violated the first principle of feed, water, fence. And so that's why, to me, that attitude and initiative is so important. That someone who has a good attitude and has good initiative, they are going to pay attention to that. And even if they don't know the exact thing that they're supposed to do, they're going to do their best and they're going to ask, instead of just saying, well, F it, they'll be fine. That's what does not work well on a livestock farm.
No, it doesn't. Things can get out of control really quickly. Like, it starts slow, but if you don't pick up on it, you can get into a tailspin for sure. Like, little problem can be a big problem very quickly.
For sure. Yeah.
So what would you say has been the biggest challenge in farming you've faced so far?
There's always something that is the current biggest challenge. A lot of times the biggest challenge is yourself, and getting yourself disciplined to a routine, or always improving yourself. Something I was thinking about the other day is the challenge for growing a business is, the bigger the business, grows, the farther into the future you have to look. That, if you're just a small one-man operation, you only need to look a month or so in the future, because if it falls apart, you can just go off and get another job. When you're only taking one pig every other month to a processor, they can kind of just work you in wherever. But as a business grows and everything has an element of scale to it, you got to start looking further and further into the future and planning things further and further down the road. And it's a growing process of always continually improving. That, there are things that employee who's here on his first day, he's got to learn. And there's things that me, full-time farmer for 13 years, been in the industry for 25 years, there's things that I need to learn. And so when you hit that point of stagnation, that's when you're going to start to decline, when you kind of have that you've arrived, time to hit cruise mode mentality.
Always be improving.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were challenges that we had in the early years that, I would laugh about right now. And then there are certainly challenges that we're dealing with right now that are very consequential. And, trying to juggle 15 different balls in the air and keep things moving. So it's kind of a different thing at different times. And you just try to work through them. Processing's been a huge challenge for several years, and COVID has not helped that at all. You could always use another $1 million. That's always nice. But that's always going to be, you will always have the next project you want to do, or the next thing that's on the horizon for capital to be sucked into. So I'd like to keep the challenge, I try to keep it as always get better with what's going on. And if there's not a challenge in front of you, then, at least for me, if there's not a challenge in front of me, that's when stagnation will start to set in.
Sure. So let's talk about the current challenge.
Yeah, it's always striving for the new PR.
That's true. Yeah. Let's talk about that current challenge. I mean, the cost of everything is just insane right now. What are you doing to fight that, combat that, work with it? Anything like that?
Yeah. Certainly inflation is no fun. Everything is getting more expensive by the day. Feed prices are going up. The number one thing that we do is you just always got to stay in front of it. That, maybe we used to do audits and reconcile numbers every 6 months kind of thing. Well, we need to do that like every 2 months right now. Because we serve a lot of other farms as well, because that's one of our big enterprises is selling piglets to other farms. And, we take orders a year in advance, a year and a half in advance on piglets. Is keeping good communication open with those guys and just saying, here's the situation. We're having to roll on a 90-day pricing schedule. It's going to adjust around. And, that way they know what is coming down the pike, and they can make adjustments to what they're doing. The biggest surprise for a business owner is an unexpected thing happening. But if you know that it's coming, you can say, all right, well, price for piglets is going up. Price for this is going up. And you can start making some adjustments right now that allows you to transfer that cost through to the market, because that's ultimately what you have to do when you are in a product business. You have to pass the costs on to the customer. And, we've had to make a lot of those adjustments, and so is everybody else. And farms who haven't made that adjustment are going to be out of business pretty soon, because you'll find that the replacement cost of your inventory is now exceeding the revenue that you're bringing in on current product. And so there's a good school of thought that I learned from the Bud Williams tree on sell buy versus buy sell. That when you are looking at marketing a product, kind of the intuitive way that we look at it is, you buy the base material the source ingredients for whatever you're doing. You manufacture the product or grow the animal, you sell it, and then your profit is what's left over.
Mm-hmm.
And his approach was you have to completely invert that when you are in a biological type of business where you're buying animals continually to replace inventory, is that you have to sell the product, buy the replacement, and then you actualize profitability, because you can't just sell the cow and start from zero again. You have to replace that cow in your herd before you can say, oh, this is our profit. And so that translates into a process of, we can't look at the inventory of, say, pork chops and beef steak and stuff that we have in the freezer. We can't look at that through the production cost of last year when it was produced, or 6 months ago when it was produced. We have to look at it through the lens of, what's it going to cost in 6 months to replace that inventory, or what's it going to cost right now? And you have to make those price adjustments right now.
That's very valuable right there. It's so you're kind of like pre-selling your meat, like the meat that you sell. Is that?
Well, it's not necessarily pre-selling, but you have to keep your prices true to the current condition. You can't say, all right, well, it cost me $100 to buy this piglet, and I put $200 of feed into it, and $200 of other costs. So if I sell it for $500, I'm breaking even. Well, the cost of piglets has gone up by 50% since then. The cost of feed has gone up by 200%. The replacement rate for the infrastructure that you're using has gone up by who knows how much. So you sold that pig for $500, and all of a sudden the next one is going to cost you $750 to produce. And either you are cash flowing that production cost out of your own pocket, or you're saying this is the replacement rate for that inventory right now, so this is the price that has to be charged for it.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look more into that, just so I fully understand like that concept.
Yeah. I mean, it's the simple way to break it down is you're looking at how money flows through your business in a sell buy perspective instead of a buy sell.
Sure. Because like the buy sell is so like ingrained in everybody. I mean, like it's really hard to like think about it the other way. It's kind of like the Wall Street bets thing when, it's, you're supposed to buy stocks low and sell high. Well, when you're short selling, you buy high and sell low. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. But
right.
Yeah, that's definitely a concept I'm gonna have to look up more on my own.
Sure. That's been very helpful for us as a business, is understanding that the numbers of yesterday are irrelevant for today, and even less relevant for tomorrow. That the only thing that matters, and this is one of the things that I laugh about in the Facebook groups, and you see these posts on a daily basis where someone 2,000 miles away posts, "What's everybody charging for piglets?" And, what they're trying to gauge the market to see what price they should put on their product, instead of knowing what their own numbers are and saying, I need to charge X amount for my product. They're just trying to kind of hide in the weeds of what everybody else is, so they don't kind of stick out too far and have kind of an embarrassment of, maybe asking too much, but they don't want to lag too far behind and, get left behind on money that they left on the table. And so you want to just kind of float up through the middle of everybody, instead of just knowing what your numbers are and saying, hey, in Virginia, this is what we need to charge for piglets. And it's going to be different for someone who's doing it in Texas, or someone who's doing it in Montana, or someone who's doing it in Maine. And that's because food is a localized economy, in its truest sense. And it's going to, oranges in Alaska are going to be a lot more expensive than oranges in Southern Florida. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Yep. Alaskan oranges. Maybe
There you
someday.
go.
Some GMO stuff.
Yeah, raised in hoop houses or something.
Yeah, there you go. So wrapping up here, you mentioned a couple of things about like people getting started, this mistakes that they would make, but what would you tell someone that hasn't started at all, just wants to get a couple of pig, like maybe like some kunekunes or something like that to
No,
raise?
please.
No kunekunes, why not?
Oh, no, please, no. We could do another podcast on that one.
All right, I'll have you back on for sure. So other than don't do kunekunes, what would you tell someone that wanted to get started?
Understand upfront what is it that you are doing. Are you doing this to secure your own food supply? Are you doing this just to have a nice expensive hobby on nights and weekends?
That's me.
Or are you doing this as a business that is going to generate revenue and pay salaries and pay taxes and pay workers' comp and all this other stuff that businesses have to deal with? And a lot of times the frustration that folks have with their farm is simply the symptom of their own indecisiveness of what they want it to be. And so just own it, whatever it is you want the farm to be. Maybe first identify what do you want the homestead or the farmstead or the farm to be. As far as the role it plays in your life, is it a business? Is it not? And then start making decisions that correspond with that mindset. Most homesteads and farmsteads are never going to be profitable because that's not their intent. The intent is to have a lifestyle and to secure a food chain, which is perfectly valid. Nothing wrong with that. But that's a much different set of decision-making tools than a farm who is doing it as, let's say a legit enterprise where it has to pay salaries and pay taxes. Different decisions have to be made for that type of business than for the homestead that has the kunekunes. There's a reason you do not see a commercial template for kunekunes, is because it does not work.
I think the kunekune was just supposed to be like a more homesteader pig than a commercial pig, but that's just what I've heard.
Maybe I will piss off your listeners, but kunekunes are a pyramid scheme fostered by those who already own kunekunes, who are trying to recover their money by getting other people to buy their kunekunes. So I
like that. I like that take a lot.
But, I mean, nothing against them. They are a legit little pig that I'm sure is very tasty. I've been around a few of them, but it's just not conducive to a commercial production model, whether it's a pastured one or especially a confinement one. That it's just slow growing. This fly is going to die here. It's a slow growing animal that doesn't gain well, doesn't have a lot of piglets, and just isn't applicable to a commercial template, which doesn't mean that it's not an animal that deserves love somewhere and doesn't fill many a plate somewhere, but it's just two very different production templates.
Sure. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm
going to get all the kunekune hate now.
That's all right. I'll send them your way. It's like, look, don't talk to me. Talk to the kunekune hater. But that's fine. So how about you tell people where they can find you? You got your YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and a website. All that is Farm Builder?
Yeah, it's all Farm Builder. If you put that in on Facebook, it'll pull it up. On YouTube, it'll pull it up. The website, for some reason, is a little bit hard to find. It's farmbuilder.us. So you have to type that in pretty much exactly in order for that to pull up. But that's where you can find me.
I'll have a link for all that.
Cool.
So, awesome. Great. I appreciate your time. And for everyone else, farmhoplife.com, subscribe, blah, blah, all that good stuff. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.